But he's really good, rookie this year, excellent driver.
Okay, next up is car number 49, Cy Harvey. He's from Helmsdale, Nova Scotia.
02 is the car, and he's going to get it.
It's going to be Cy Harvey takes the 100th lap.
Excellent. Followed by 02, Mike McKenzie, 10 Eddie.
Raceway, if you can't make it here, keep watching for Funny Motorsports magazine. We'll keep you up to date on the NASCAR Tour.
With me is Cy Harvey, winner of the NASCAR 100-lap feature. Cy, how do you feel?
Feel pretty good. It's been a long time coming, and one of the hottest races I think I've ever been in, but I think I owe pretty well everything to Frankie Fraser here. He got me dialed in. See the results. So hopefully we can keep doing better.
Did any of the stoppages hurt you at all, or did they?
Other than the heat just terrible.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks a lot.
In third, this is a 20-lap feature here tonight for the International Weekend. Sly Cy goes underneath the 63. Can he make it a 2-for-1 special? Trying to dig underneath the 28. Patrick Horn. Cy Harvey grabs first. We've said that once or twice here at Petty. Now let's see if we can get some distance in front of the 28 and the 63. Debut race for the Hot Rod Classics brought to you by NTN Bearings. Will it be a thriller? Coming up to the white flag. Can Patrick Horn get side by side with Cy Harvey? White flag in the air. One more time around here. Can Jim Rankin try and make a move and steal the win? Cy Harvey's going to use that wide mirror and that wide chrome bumper to block the 28. The first winner of the Heart of a Champion Hot Rod Classic is the legend Cy Harvey. One more time, race fans. Let's hear it for Cy Harvey, the legend here at Petty. Stick 'em up. There's your trophy, Cy. How does it feel that you are the very first winner of the Heart of the Champion Hot Rod Classics Vintage Race Car Series brought to you by NTN here at Petty?
You know, I raced this track, the first race it ever raced way back. And I raced the 660 race, the first inaugural race. You know, it feels just as good to win this.
Welcome into Tim's Corner Live, episode number 53. Well, we have Paul, which is good. We have Denver Matchett. Denver, can you let me know where Dylan is again, just to refresh our memory? Where is he at this week?
Dylan posted a picture earlier, and I saw a frozen lake in the background, and he looked like he was not dressed for the weather. I can say that. Some sort of a spa.
It's on the screen.
It's on the screen now for all of our viewers. Not a lot of snow. There's less snow, I guess, in Nova Scotia than in New Brunswick. Meredith has told me something about this, and I probably didn't really pay a lot of attention. I think it's called a Nordic spa, Tim. Yep. So him and the fiance are having a relaxing night, I guess, and having some fun. So we wish he was here, especially with the guests that we have. But it's nice to take a break every once in a while too.
Now, Paul, the way you have that cropped, or the way you did have that cropped, he is wearing pants. We just want to stress that he was wearing pants in that shot. Put that up one more time. There you go. We'll cover Paul's head. He is wearing pants. He did say that he would shed some clothing and he would charge double. But I don't know if you can charge if he's getting paid zero for that shot. I don't know how double of zero is anything.
Tell him you're going to pay him triple. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
triple zero is still zero.
That's it. Paul, exciting couple of weeks coming up here. Neps is off this week, so it's a little slower on the Vidane TV side of things. Picking up next week with some Tim's Corner stuff. Neps finale, going to be fun, but it's in the transition period for everybody. I guess we're getting ready to go real racing too, right?
Yeah, 100%. All the way up and down the East Coast and all around the world, North America, Canada, America, everybody getting ready to go racing. It was 65 degrees here in Southern Connecticut. Beautiful day today. Beautiful day coming up Friday. The air smells like race gas. Race season is coming. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming. COVID, it's just going to disappear. We're all going racing here soon. It's going to be an absolute blast. Little light on the eye racing this week. Back next week, though. We got TCM, Eastbound Esports, the NEPS finale. We're going to be crowning a champion there. Lots of exciting stuff coming up here in the next week or so. And, oh, by the way, I had to throw this in there. Happy 316. It's not the new one, but it'll do in a pinch.
Absolutely. Want to welcome everybody that's watching as well. I know the comments are already rolling in. This is going to be a big show. I see Doug Jago is watching Turkeytown Mudbog. I think they've had some events. They had one canceled, I think, here in the last couple of weeks or so, but good to see them getting kicked up with some winter stuff and moving forward and what have you. Leave your comments down below. Leave your song requests down below. Now, I'm not going to say why, but just if you have any requests tonight for our guest, might be able to oblige as well. But Denver, this has been a slow week. When all the schedules came within like 2 weeks. They're all done releasing. Sydney still has a couple of dates. I think the biggest news is that Valley Raceway is not operating in 2022. They have decided to leave the season vacant. We're going to talk to Cy Harvey about that too, because I know he's been to the dirt track and he's had some success there. But hard to see that. But and I know Dylan's not here, and I know he'd wanted to comment on it too. But hopefully, we wish all the best to Greg and Peggy, and we'll see them hopefully in 2023, or maybe we can get something stirred up that they can at least run one show.
Absolutely, Tim. It's one of those deals, I guess. You look back at the last 2 years and just how tough COVID has been on the entire industry. I believe Valley just canceled their entire 2020 season. And I know even though they had a couple races last year, even when they finally were able to run, there was a lot of weather issues and a lot of rain, and it really plagued their season. So a couple tough seasons, and it makes it hard. And finding staff who are wanting to give up times to go do that type of thing, that's hard. And getting drivers back into it after a break, none of that stuff is easy. Hopefully, they can get some support drummed up, like you said, at least get a race or two in maybe this year, or maybe someone will, lease the track. I know they mentioned that, and hopefully brighter things will come in 2023. I think, Tim, that is the only dirt track in the Maritimes. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the only one that operating still, isn't it?
They do have Liverpool, and I've never been. I'll be completely honest with you. I've never been. I don't know if it's completely dirt or if it's some sort of other rock's not the right word, but it's not a clay surface per se. But they are the only other ones that are operating. And I did see a post today that they are racing this season. They just don't have a schedule yet. So hopefully everything works out for them, and hopefully they can get something underway. Ivan wants to know if we know a reason why, and I haven't talked to Greg. I haven't talked to Peggy. I haven't done that side of things yet, but still plenty of months to go and weeks to go. Hopefully we see them open at some point. Before we go in and we chat with our guests this evening, we'll pull up the giveaway graphic, because we mentioned last week we didn't do our $50 giveaway in February. We're going to transfer it over in March. So if you head to timscorner.tv and sign up for either the monthly subscription or any sort of event pass, you are entered to win. If you go to timscorner.ca/promo and fill out the ballot, your favorite driver is going to win $50. You're going to win race tickets from either Speedway, Miramichi, or Scotia Speed World. And we can tell you that the Old North State Nationals that Pit Road TV and Cars Tour TV produced last week, available on demand on the Tim's Corner TV subscription. So you can go back and see a fantastic late model stock race. Austin McDonald, we're not going to spoil it for you, but he finished third behind the incredible battle between Quapple and Fenhouse at the end. Head over, take a look at that if you haven't already. Going to be big. And of course, their next race, you can head to carstore.tv, is at Hickory next weekend for the Cars Tour. So Denver, I know you were kind of keeping your eye on it. Some great racing. Apparently, Cole Butcher may have been driving Caden Honeycutt's car, missed shift. We know how that works.
You said that, not me, Tim. I saw the picture of a couple cars getting wadded up, and I think we've seen that at Riverside a time or two, unfortunately. But great to see some racing getting fired up. It was a busy weekend all across the states, like you said. I know the Radler 250 last weekend. Ty Majeski won that fifth total, which sets a record for that race. And I will say I'm a very competitive person. That's the one goddamn race I would not want to win. I don't care if I'd lead the first 249 laps and just stuff it in the wall, as opposed to having to get a picture taken with a snake. I assume there was no snakes at where you were, Tim, because it looked like you got a little bit of snow.
It was a little bit wet. It was a little bit white at some points too. So good to see we finally got it in. And Darren Bazanson wants to hear from our guests. We're going to get there in a moment. Doug Jago says big sled race coming up on the 26th. I knew they had something coming up, and he apparently got to have a taste of the microphone too. So I'd love to sit back and listen to Doug call a snowmobile race. I might have to. I'm home on the 26th. I might have to come up to that. But without further ado, Paul, let's get ready and get into this evening's guest. And it is a man that needs no introduction when it comes to motorsports in the Maritimes. Hit that button there, transfer that over. We'll get him to turn on his camera, or we'll get the production assistant, Mr. Danny Harvey, to turn on his camera this evening. The legend, Cy Harvey, is going to be joining us here in just a moment. This is going to be a fun evening, and there we go. One button, and turn on the mic. There you go. Cy, you got us?
Locked up, Tim. My nerves are going. I'm done, Tim. It's the end of the show. How does that make you feel?
Well, there's a first time for everything, right?
Oh, yeah. We're good to go, Tim. We're good to go. Just remember one thing before we start. Basically, I'm just a bullshitter, but I can get the job done.
I'm sure there's going to be some stories here tonight. We're here with the legend, Cy Harvey. We are live and interactive. Drop a comment below, and we'll get it on the air. So, Cy, I guess the easiest thing is, how's the winter been for you?
So far, so good. So far, life's been good so far. All I can say.
So have you been tinkering with any race cars getting ready for the year?
No, I've been working on my dirt track a little bit up there, working on my ice track, and playing around with that a bit, and playing with the horses, and a little bit of everything, Tim. Variety is the spice of life, they say.
So last year, would you have Northrop or something on that track with legend cars with 10-inch users and?
Oh, did you see that thing on Facebook with Northrop? I never saw a man who could drive that fast. Fast man on earth.
I didn't think he could drive that fast either, but at least they got something out of him. He needs to go ice racing, I guess.
Oh yeah. Well, I've never had him up to the dirt track yet. I had him on a little dirt track that I got here at my house. We were testing some legend cars with like Northrop. That man can drive. He can drive.
He had a Saturn a couple of years ago in Sydney. He absolutely loved it, and yeah, now he's got that hot rod though. It's going to be hard to pry him from that hot rod.
Well, yeah, I don't know how that's working out for Northrop. That hot rod thing. I don't know whether it's really in his realm. That's hot rod racing is sort of a little bit of a different deal. Northrop is an all-out racer. Like Northrop racing, it's all out, and it's hard to do that with Paddy's series. There, you can't get too aggressive, because if you get too aggressive, it kind of frigs up the show, or people don't get in line, and it's a different type of situation. I don't know Northrop whether he's going to be cut out for that or not, because he likes to race. You put him in a car, he'll race.
Now, you didn't get any hot rod racing in last year, did you? Danny got a race in.
Dan got one in there. Yeah, I've got a couple of those cars, and I won a couple of races there. The first season they had it going, had a great time with it. But I got racing horses, and I was concentrating on getting a drive with the horse. And that sort of slowed things down a little bit, and it's worked the same as any race car. So it ended up that I just didn't seem to get time to get on and get to any of the races.
Now you got a couple of those legend car races in though. I want to talk about the motor in a second, but that one weekend that Danny got to drive that hot rod, Jeff got to drive the Pro Stock too. So it was a free for all pretty much, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, Jeff, he wanted to try the Pro Stock, so we gave him the Pro Stock, and he did a good job with it. Jesus, he got a really good first time in a Pro Stock, jumping from a legend car to a Pro Stock's quite a little jump, so he done well with it. Done really well.
So we're going to see him hop back behind the wheel at all this year, you think?
I'm not sure. I haven't talked to Jeff lately, but it's hard to say. The Pro Stock is still there, but everything seems to be up in the air so much now, and like they say, tires is going to be a problem, and this is going to be a problem, and all you hear is problems. So who knows? It all depends. Is the war going to be over? If the war's over, we'll see.
Now, you did get a little bit of time with that new FZ09 car that you got there. I know you had some trepidations at the start a couple of years ago when this motor came out, thinking I don't know about this change, and you got behind the wheel of it. What do you think now?
Love it. Love the car, but I think the old age took over on me, because I was pushing the car out of the damn trailer, and I was standing on the running board looking back, and all of a sudden the front wheel caught the wire from the trailer that holds the door up, and threw me under the car, hurt my shoulder. So that kind of messed me up for racing that for the rest of the year. It took one of those rotator cuff injuries, and from then on it wasn't very enjoyable, so I kind of backed off a bit. Maybe we'll try it next year.
So how's the shoulder now?
Oh, it's good now. But I kept dialing myself out. I'd get to the racetrack with that car. Nice truck, nice car, felt great, and I'd start out, I would be doing good, and all of a sudden something would go wrong. I'm going to make it better. Well, it didn't happen. Every time the feature started, I was worse. I just kind of dialed myself out. But racers do that now and again.
And does that go to the new tires, new motor? You got to relearn everything again, right?
Well, that's kind of the reason that I wanted to get that car, because it brought a Hoosier tire in. One of the big beefs with legend car racing over the years has been that it's kind of like black art when you get new tires and have to buff the tread off them, and everybody has their own special way of doing it, you know, and like if you don't get the right guy to buff your tires, you're just not dialed in. So like that's always been a beef. And when they go to the Hoosier tire, the tires are all basically the same as you're running a race tire, and you can work with stagger and you can work with things that race cars work with, and that kind of will make the difference eventually, and the good guys will figure that out and have already, you know, that the Hoosier tires are the way to go because they're a race tire, whereas the street tires can't play much with stagger. You got to buff the damn tires right. If you don't get it buffed with that southern thing down south, like there's a couple of guys down there that are just phenomenal at buffing these tires, and when you get a set of tires from them, you know, it kind of makes your car twice as fast. As a matter of fact, way back 95 or 96, when I took the Legend car down there, 600 had a whole warehouse full of tires. Well, we were used to running 60 series tires here in the modified race cars, and the guy at Canadian Tire taught me how to read dates, production dates on the tires, and like I knew that these were DOT tires that 600 had a warehouse full, and the newer the tire, the softer they are. So 600 ends up like let me into their warehouse to check out the tires. So I got reading the dates on the tires and ended up with the best tires that was in the warehouse. And the guys down there didn't have any idea of how to read production dates in the DOT number. So it kind of set me off pretty good. I was in pretty good shape when I went to the racetrack. You know, I had pretty well the best tires at the track just because the guy at Canadian Tire showed me how to read the DOT number with the date in the tire. But then next year I went down, they were all doing it. They wouldn't even let me in the warehouse. So just one of those things, I guess.
So how did you get involved with all this legend car stuff? Because you were showing me earlier, you did the modified stuff at Scotia. You obviously were doing the pro stock stuff. And how did you get into the legend car thing? Ronnie Heffler. I've always been fairly good buddies with Ronnie, and he took over the dealership with the legend cars back in 95, whenever they came in here. Plattenberg brought them in first, and then Ronnie sort of took it over, and he became a dealer. And of course, he talked me and Ivan Langell into buying one, so we bought it. And and Ronnie was running race schools and everything, and it seemed to be the way to go. And things weren't too fast. The cars, they're just coming on as a new production model, and people didn't really have them dialed in like they are today. So it was fairly easy to be competitive, and like they started out with 7 cars, and there we go. It just kind of developed from there. And if you're competitive in it, feels good, do it. Absolutely. We're going to jump all over the place here tonight. I see social media starting to come back now. Jordan Fraser's watching, so I'm sure Frank Sr. is watching. Is there any stories we can tell about Frank?
Let me tell you something. Way back, when we first started racing, Frank was always the best. Frank had the best car. Frank was the best driver. When I come on the scene, Frank was the man. So anyway, I ended up getting the car somehow along the line. I got a car from Russell White, bought me a race car. We were racing in Agonish, and I don't know. We were having a pretty good race, and things were damn competitive back then. And I was driving, and Frank was behind me. So after the race is done, this is the heat race we're in. After the race is done, Frank comes over. He says, "Si, you're not leaving me much room on the outside of the car." That was the rule back then. You leave a guy a lane on the outside to race. That was, track etiquette. So anyway, I turned around to Frank and I said, "Do you have enough room for your car, Frank?" "Well, I might have." And I said, "That's all you're getting." Frank just walked away. You must have had enough.
Well, he was still out there, right?
Yeah, he ended up passing me anyway. So, how much room you need?
That's just it. And she said something about she was surprised that all the pictures that we showed earlier we're going to show this evening weren't in black and white. So I think that was that was something about an age comment or something.
Oh, I think she changed her diapers lately.
I'm sure we're going to hear about that. Stacy Clements wants to know when you're coming back with the hot rod because he wants to race you with that Hanley car.
Hey, that's part of the reason I'm not there, because Stacy built that car and it's twice as fast as mine. If I can't, even let me think I'm competitive, I'll come back. But like to try to race with Stacy and Tyler with those cars that they got, Jesus, come on, boys. Those are top 5 cars in the pro stock class. I'm running a car show here. With this junk that I've got, I can't race that. Anyway.
So what you're saying is, if Stacy wants to trade and he can go in your car and you can go in his car, then that you come back.
You got it. You got it. If we trade cars, I'll come back.
There we go. I'm sure we can figure that out.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else do we got here? We got a couple rolling in. Darren Bazansen's watching, wants to say hello. Tyler Hallahan's watching too. Derek Hilchey and Art McNamara is watching. He wants to know some secrets. So what can you give Mr. Art for some secrets racing that 4-cylinder car?
Secrets?
Yeah.
All racing? Any racing?
Any racing.
Well, I was always noted as a traffic man. Always had a pretty good name of being able to get through traffic. Well, there's a few tricks in that. Like I used to have Frank build me a kicker bar on the back of my car, because these late model cars now, now the back bumper braces come up in the air, and you can actually stick that long snout under somebody and pick their back end up a little bit and steer them if you want. Without pushing them, just pick them up very gently, and you can steer them. So I had to put a kicker bar on the back of my car, which come down about 2 inches from the ground. So if you hit me, you drove me down. So you didn't mind, if somebody come up and hit you with it. So that kind of got you through traffic, because if somebody come along and started nudging you a little bit to pick you up, just touch the brake a little bit, they'll back off. But there's quite a few tricks. There's only like a lot of good drivers out there. But when it comes right down to it, there's about 5 moves you can make in stock car racing. And if you treat it as a job, know what to see ahead of time, look ahead of you a little bit, and know what the opening is, and be good at that, you'll be good in traffic. And another trick or two there, Tim, if we're talking, since we're on that trick deal. I always used to get accused of horse racing, because when I started horse racing, if you ever go to a horse race, watch the moves that these drivers pull. I mean, they'll box a guy in so the fastest horse in the racetrack, he can't go in. You can do that in car racing, because like a lot of guys go like hell and try to run away from the guy in the second place, right? Well, I always figured, if you watch the good guys, they'll come up to a lap car. They see themselves coming up to a lap car, and then they'll pick their spot, go to the outside, because if the guy is chasing them hard on your ass, you're coming around, you're coming to a lap car, you might as well use him. So you pull to the outside, but you don't go by. That breaks the momentum of the guy behind you, and it lets the other people catch up, gets the race going behind you. So don't go by that guy, and once it slows down, everybody way back in the pack starts thinking, oh, Jesus, my car's working great now. First thing you start wrecking, because the cars are working so good. And you cause the whole damn thing by boxing the guy in, by not going by the guy that's being lapped, because you're faster. You can go whenever you want. Would you call that a dirty trick?
I feel like you might have did that about 10 years ago to some of them young upstart, the guys that are in pro stock now that think they're the hot shoes. I seem to think they went through that school of Psy back then about 10 years ago, didn't they?
How many of them you see passing the outside? Like I was saying earlier there, when we started racing race cars, there was a rule of thumb. Let me tell you another story about Rolly McDonald. Now, this is a good one. I had that car, and Bobby Allen was a top-notch man way back at Atlantic Speedway, And Rolly had a kit car, and I think he had won 13 races in a row or something with it. It's great, beautiful race cars. So anyway, Bobby Allen is on the outside, and this is kind of where I picked up this deal about how to do that with that, because Rolly was going, and Bobby Allen was the outside. Well, Bobby Allen had a faster car, and I was in behind, boxed in. And I kept hitting Rolly coming off the turn because Rolly couldn't get off the turn the same as Bobby could. And Bobby was just sitting out there. And Rolly was kind of, Bobby was playing with him. And I kept hitting Rolly coming off the turn because I was thinking he was going to get by Bobby. Never did get by Bobby. Race is over. I'm standing there beside my car and I see Rolly coming in. Rolly's a big man, He was back then when Rolly was young. He was a big, husky man. I said, "Uh-oh, I'm dead now." Rolly comes over. He comes over and he said, "Si, there's no passing on the inside." So I learned then your thing went on. So I learned then from Rolly, that the etiquette for that is kind of, that's where you learn the track etiquette. Is what Rolly taught me a lesson, but I thought for sure he's going to kill me. He always got along good ever since. No problem. I don't know what's going on there.
All young race car drivers learn from somewhere, right?
Well, today, like I say, keep it coming back to that like back in those days, if you were a young race car driver, you were taught etiquette on the racetrack. Leave the guy or lane on the outside. And, and another thing about that is, if you leave the guy a lane on the outside, nobody should be able to get under you. If they get under you, you are overdriving your race car. Slow the hell down because you're overdriving your race car. But nowadays, with these kids, they push the guy, get him out of the way somehow, But a lot of them will get looking in the mirror, and that's the worst mistake you can make is to look in that mirror, because then you won't be able to stay down on the track where you should be, and you're not doing anything wrong by slowing up. The guy should be able to go to the outside. You're leaving him room, get the hell to the outside. The inside track that's mine, I'm leading, you get the outside. But they don't do that. Now it's just smash, crash, and, push cars out of the way and push the reset button, kick the old man's wallet in.
If they have a fast enough car, they should go to the outside where there's no other cars and not through somebody, right?
Piggyback, when the car racing started, that was the etiquette that I learned. And if a guy goes to the outside and goes by me, great. Let me tell you a little story. Corey Hall, I had about the fastest legend car going. Corey Hall, I don't know where he come from, down somewhere. And anyway, I'm in Scotia, and Corey Hall's into this black sedan, and they just come up from down south someplace. So anyway, we get racing, and I figured, all I'll do is I'll park them. If they go to the outside and can't roll on by me, I'll use you. I know you're not fast enough, so I'll make a race of it for the crowd, and we're racing. Well, Corey pulled up beside me and said, "I'll park him." No parking Corey Hall. He just rolled right on by. But I give him room on the outside. I could have went up and down the track and caused hell, made an ass of myself. But I knew right then and there that my day is coming to an end.
Well, you still got some days left, though, right?
well, time will tell. It's going to get the station car. Yeah, we had the station car. I could put on a show there.
We got some comments rolling in on social. I want to get to those because I know Denver's chomping at the bit too. Taylor Albert says, "Hi, Si. Wondering what has been your favorite style of race car to run over the years? Legend, pro stock, truck, anything in between? What's been your favorite car to run?"
One with four legs.
Besides the horse.
You can't see that trophy there, kid.
Right. Yeah.
No, seriously, the race cars are kind of, it all depends. It's different styles of racing and stuff, That car that I bought from Rolly, I bought that car you see there, 93, 94 along there. That was a nice race car. But, I've never had that many good race cars in my time. But I bought that race car from Rolly because it came right from Junior Henley, right out of New Smyrna, and the Jollymore boys, Randy and Gary Jollymore, got that thing going for me, and then I took it up to Fraser's, and that was a really nice race car. If I could keep pro stock like that, but it was state-of-the-art equipment at the time. It cost a lot of money to keep up in state-of-the-art equipment. But that race car, as far as race cars go, that was my favorite race car. And like, I don't know, like nowadays, it's 125 grand to replace that. You know, so like an old hillbilly like me is just not capable of keeping up with that equipment. But that was my favorite race car.
Okay. Jason Fenton's watching. You raced with Jason Fenton in the trucks, didn't you?
Yeah.
And any memories about trying to swap some paint with that 3? Because he's a tough ticket when you're on the racetrack with him.
Well, he may not like what I have to say. I might just earn myself a slap in the face. So I better not go there.
I
tell a few stories. He's one hell of a racer. You know, Jason is one hell of a racer, and like you know, I kind of pride myself in being able to drive through wrecks. You know, there's a big thing in racing. If you're going to be successful, you got to drive through wrecks. And if you can drive through wrecks, you know, you'll probably be quite successful about it. But, you know, another thing too that I find over the years, and I've been at it a long time, is that if you don't have a bit of a dirty streak in you, you're not much of a racer.
Jason doesn't have a dirty streak in him, does he?
Oh, no, I never said that.
Now, I want to ask you about the trucks, but there's a gentleman watching that we talked about before we came on air tonight, and that's Alex Nagy. He's watching. What kind of stories can we tell about the Nagy boys?
Oh, Jesus. Like I was telling you before we came on the air there, when I went to Barrie, the Nagy boys, they gave me $6,000 to go up there because there were 2 fastest cars there. They must have had half a second. The 2 brothers had half a second on the rest of the field, and I couldn't do anything with them. Jesus, I just average running. About 45 laps into the race, the Nagy boys get together, spin out, and leave me on the front end, and they get put to the back. And before they could catch me, the race was over, and I got $6 grand. So I got to thank Alex and his brother because you know I'm still spending that money.
Now, he told me a story earlier today, or I saw a comment earlier today where he said that he went down to Florida one year and you were racing down there and you had this big wheel in your car. And he asked you about the big wheel, and you said that in order to be a big wheel, you need to have a big wheel. So does that still fit?
I never did thank him. We were racing at Volusia County, and Alex was running the show there. He had a pretty high up position, and like if we come to the line to pay in the window, Alex give me the wave every time. Me and my crew, we never had to pay our way in, thanks to Alex. Don't let 600 know.
He says, wish he didn't remind me about that $6 grand.
He didn't need the money anyway.
Matt Moore says big wheel and big caster.
Yeah, that caster was quite a deal. I had quite a run with that, you know, because I took a car down south there, and like I read in a book somewhere, you know, to put all the caster in you can to help you. So I said, well, how much caster could I put in the legend car? So I just tried it for the hell of it. You know, Jesus, it felt all right. So I went down south with it, you know, and on that flat track, I don't think it was so much the caster that was working. It was the tires that I had picked out from 600 with the dates on them, you know, and they put me on the flat track. And with the caster, I could actually lift the front wheel off the turn coming out. I lobbed the left front wheel because I had about 58% wedge and stupid thing, you know, and we picked the left front wheel up, and like they just sit down there and shake their heads that I could pass on the flat track because I could let the ass end hang out, but the caster would change the wedge to let the ass end come loose. And then when you straighten that big wheel up, it would steer so damn hard you couldn't hardly do it. But when you straighten that thing up, it would just come out of the turns like a rocket. And on that flat track, that really worked good. So I kind of got quite a run out of that. And like everybody down there just shake their head and say, what the hell are you doing in that car? You know, it's kind of works like a dirt car. But anyway, I got quite a bit of mileage.
It sounds like it. I'm gonna throw it over to Denver because I'm sure Denver's got a couple of questions for you tonight. Denver, what do you got for Cy?
Well, Cy, thank you for joining us on the show tonight. It's a pleasure to have you on tonight, an icon such as yourself. First question, we haven't gone here yet. I want to go back to, how did you get your start in racing?
Start in racing? Oh, Jesus. Well, Stanley and Merlin Miller used to be into the racing pretty heavy back when they were young, like back in the Drag City days, like 1969 or something. And I was hanging around Stanley's quite a bit because they had a garage there and they were always playing with race cars and stuff. So that kind of got me half interested in it. And I had an old 64 Chevelle that I had wrecked on the street. So Stanley helped me put a cage in it and everything. And I kind of started out with that. And like that got me going. But the first race or two, I got into a poker game with Edward Cameron and a couple other fellows there. Of course, we just kind of sitting around drinking a few beers and having a poker game. And Edward had a 56 Chev, and like we always kind of went to the races and stuff. So Edward said, "I'll tell you what, if I put this race car up, if you win, we'll make a race car with my Chev." So I won the poker hand. And he was committed then, so we took that race car, his 50, nice car too. He used to drive it on the street. Took it over to a guy that used to race in 9 Mile River. It was Art Bond, and Art, he's more than willing to help us. He helped us put a cage in it. And we took it to Drag City, and the guy by the name of Eldon Singer, Jet Singer, they used to call him. He was quite a wild cat around Knoll Road there, and everybody was driving, and all it was muscle cars and racing back in the 60s anyway. So we decided, we'd take the Drag Cities. We took it there, and there was 2 heat races and a feature. And like, he would take a heat race, I would take a heat race, and then we'd flip a coin for the feature. And we only raced 3 races, and I think I had to drive all 3 features because every time he lost. but then at the end of the season, they opened up Atlantic Speedway. And unbeknownst to me, he took the race car down there for the final race. It was in the fall, wrecked it. So that kind of ended it. But that's what got me into racing. The story come out that I won that first race car in a poker game. I guess it's true. It's true. But Stanley Miller was a big help in any of the racing that I've ever done over the years. Stanley always helped me. Always, very good with race cars. And if you wanted to know anything, like, you just go to Stanley, and he could pretty well straighten you out.
I want to ask you about some of the tracks that you would have been at over the years, and we might as well start with Atlantic Speedway. That's one that's already come up. What can you tell us about Atlantic Speedway?
Well, it was a nice, big, wide open track. Jim Corbett, he built it. I guess Webby's given the money to build it or back them or something, but Corbett told me the reason that racetrack had the nice big turns in it was because when the engineers built it, like the CN Railway, when they build railways, they have a level thing that they do elevations with. And he had the engineer out at his racetrack when he engineered it. And they made the turns according to the whole idea of the railways being like that. They put enough curve in the turn so that it should go through the turn basically the same speed as the straightaway. So Corbett did that to his racetrack, and there was a nice big wide open racetrack. And if you could stay wound up on that, you could really go, and because the turns were big and wide, and it was engineered the same as a railroad track, which I always figured, that these tracks today, I don't know where they get the engineering for some of these racetracks, because there's nobody can go on the outside of anything. You could go on the outside of Corbett's track all day long, never bother you. The outside of the track just as fast as the inside of the track. So nowadays, how many racetracks do you see that they can go on the outside? It just doesn't happen. But that was a nice racetrack.
How about Halifax Dartmouth International Speedway? I think that one was in Sackville, was it?
That was the Drag City track. That was the one I mentioned earlier, where that was the last season that run that we had that old 56 Chev there. Like that was the only experience I had at that track. It was a nice racetrack too. It was NASCAR sanctioned, I believe. Something, I don't know anything about the engineering of it or anything, but it was a nice racetrack.
What about Onslow Speedway in Truro? I know there's been rumblings of some, I guess, happenings potentially going on there. That track's been shut down for a while, but what can you tell us about Onslow Speedway back in the day?
Onslow is a dirt track. Started out as a dirt track, and basically what they did was just pave a dirt track. Pave a dirt track. There was a lot of people had complaints about Onslow, but you couldn't expect much else because it was a dirt track. It was an excellent dirt track. But if you pave a dirt track, it's not really the same. You've got to have the engine. It's got to be engineered. If you took the track and engineered it like Corbett did his track, it'd be different. But like, I won a lot of races there. Not bragging myself up too much, but like it was another one of those things that I kind of a lot of racing that you outclass the field. You make yourself look good, but is it really you or is it the equipment you got? In Onslow, I was running a 400 motor and everybody else was running a 350, but it was legal, so get the job done.
Absolutely. Now I believe, Cy, did you go to New Smyrna Speedway and race one time in the 70s?
Yeah, that was quite a time. New Smyrna. I took stupidity, when you're young, you don't know any different. Bought the car. Russell White bought the car for me from Biederman. We went to London, Ontario, and Biederman had won the race with it. And right off the bat, being young and stupid, you take it from New Smyrna. Billy Jones, I think at the time, talked us in it for whatever reason. I mean, was racing when you're young and you don't give a shit. So anyway, I could reach the brake pedal, but you had to pump the brake pedal with that stupid thing. So anyway, I took Frank. We took the car to New Smyrna, got there, and we were doing all right. We finished top 10 every night, but this is way back, when race cars weren't engineered. They were kind of homemade stuff, and Biederman had the best car, the best car in Canada at the time. But the first night I was there, I believe Mark Martin was 16 years old, and he was having his inaugural trials. So I'm starting at the back, and he's probably starting third or fourth. Don't he get into a Jesus big rack, stack the field up in front of me, and I can't reach the brake pedal. So I just don't remember going this way and that way. Cars, and it took both wheels right off the car. Frank had to work on it for 2 days to get it back on the track. But anyway, that was my memory of that. But that's a nice racetrack. That's a half-mile racetrack with banks, and I'm kind of wondering, if they engineered that for the turns to be the same. Like, that's another one. Got any more? I've been to them all.
all kinds of tracks. How about there's a couple obviously still open today. What about Riverside? I mean, that's kind of the crown jewel of Atlantic Canada right now, and what the Chisholm family has done with it.
You can't beat Riverside. Riverside is a racer's track. Like, you can drive that sucker into the turn and think you're sliding up the turn. You're not sliding up the turn at all. You're handling it. So it is a nice racetrack, and everybody that ever races there will tell you that it is a nice racetrack. So really, it's hard to beat that. But there's other tracks. What about Riverglade?
That was the next one on my list, was Riverglade.
Riverglade is a sweetheart. I remember Hefner took us all up there with the legend cars, and I think there was 10 cars, and 9 of them were in the wall before we ever got to the race. They just kept hitting the wall, and just, it was terrible. But I remember, another thing I remember about Riverglade, you take Bobby Allen and Rolly, the Riverglade, and they both hit the wall. Practice. I don't know. But those walls, it was a funny little racetrack. It had 2 turns in it. Oh, Jesus, it was just murder. But let me tell you another story about Riverglade. I couldn't run it. I went up there with a sportsman car with a 519 gearing, and like I could spin that sucker from one end of the track to the other, just fishtail. Like, so I had all kinds of power. I had way too much power for this track. But I only had a 519 gearing. So anyway, I found out after the next season that most of those guys were running probably 660 gear or something. And Jim Hallahan was running there at the time, and he had come off of Pinecrest. And Pinecrest is basically the same as Riverglade. So I said, Jim, how do I get this thing going? Because he was the king of Pinecrest, always was. He said, how big a gear have you got in your kit there? And I said, and you can only get a 728. I just have a 728 gear in. Put the biggest gear you got in it. Put the biggest gear in it, I won. It's just all the difference in the world, because everybody else is coming down in gear. You think with a 519 gear, I could just smoke everybody. Hallahan wasn't long cluing me in on that. When I got that gear, I didn't have to use any brakes or anything. I revved the old motor, but it would pull coming out of the turns, and that's the answer for that. And come right from Hallahan. If you listen and you learn, people will tell you things. As long as you listen, you probably make progress. But that Riverglade racetrack, make you scratch your head.
And kind of, complete opposite of what what you described at Atlantic Speedway. Riverside, real tight and not a lot of room to work with, for sure.
Yeah, it was. I remember another story I had there was Paulie Bear. A lot of people know Paulie Bear was a hell of a good runner. He used to run Dodge, and he'd run the rough. But Riverglade was rough, it was pushing and shoving and squeezing, like just a real old barn burner racetrack. Every race was like that. And the past people, you kind of had to be aggressive. And like Ernie McLean was running, and I had backed my car into the wall the week before, in Atlantic or somewhere, and frigged up the front end of it or something. So anyway, I was coming out of the turn, and when I come out of the turn, the steering box, because we had steering boxes back then, we didn't have rack and pinion. Steering box locked up, and when it locked up, I couldn't steer. The steering wheel locked up. Paulie Bear was right behind me on my bumper. Well, he didn't know my steering was locked up, but he was pushing me. And so when he pushed me, it pushed me right into the wall, right? So he gets by, and it looked like he pushed me into the wall. Well, in a way, he did. But Ernie McLean came over to me after the race. He says, if he pushed you in the wall, I'll black flag. And I said, no, he didn't push me in the wall. He said, my steering locked up. And it was just that type of racetrack, And like Ernie was already the black flag Paulie Bear, and it wasn't his fault at all. It was locked up. The steering was locked up. So that's just another little story. It's Riverglade. Always something.
Absolutely. I'm wondering, Si, did you ever get to race up in the northern part of New Brunswick in Miramichi, Douglastown, or up at Danny Speed Bowl in Bathurst?
I went to Hefner, took us up there with the legend cars. I couldn't get running at all. I don't know what was wrong, whether it was something wrong with my car or what it was, but I didn't like the Miramichi track. Didn't like it. But I'll tell you another track probably nobody's ever run on. Hefner took us to the legend cars. It's over Elephant Rock and PEI. I don't know if you ever heard of it. Nice little track. And the banks are just like that. And it was the same idea. They must have engineered that track the same with the banking on it as they did Atlantic, because I can go probably 2 or 3 tenths quicker than John Barcos and the rest of the gang. But when we get out racing, Barcos went to the outside of me, and I couldn't get away from him. I couldn't get away from him. And I was 3 tenths faster than him, but I could not get away from him because that's the way that racetrack was built. It was just as fast on the outside as it was on the inside, maybe a little faster. So it's but that is a nice little racetrack. I don't even know if it's still there.
I've seen some pictures of Elephant Rock, and it's the banking looks very steep. I don't know in person how it would compare to a Riverside or a Petty, but it looks very, very, I think they said 24, 28 degrees or something like that.
Kind of like a smaller Antigonish. It's kind of like that. Beautiful little racetrack. They're in the farmer's field. I don't know. We only ever went there once.
I think it hasn't been racing in my lifetime at least, but I think the track is still there, and people, I don't know, maybe Jeff McGinnis or someone, or maybe someone from PEI that's watching can tell us. I know there was a couple people though that went for a drive and posted some pictures not that long ago. Si, before I throw it back over to Tim and social media, because I'm sure it's lighting up, I want to ask you about your experience driving the open wheel cars at Scotia. I believe that was in the 90s.
1989, first race. I think I got that from Ernie. Thank you, Ernie. First winner of the first race. So that's about all I got to say about that. But that's open wheel modified. You know, that was a nice car. It kind of over the years, what evolved out of that, you know, as it was built, it was a really nice race car because you could do a lot with it within the rules, you know, as far as creativity went. You could create a bit with that. It was kind of a shame that when they scrapped it and switched over to sportsman cars, it kind of frigged up the sportsman cars too, because they went, instead of having a open wheel modified, they put a body on it and called it a sportsman car. So then it kind of evolved the wrong way, you know, because they are two different things. That open wheel modified was a nice class, and I don't know yet why they did away with it, because that could have evolved into, well, like in other parts of the country, it could have evolved into a really nice race car. They still have the version of it in Brunswick, and that's a nice race car. I used to have one. Gordy McCullough had bought one of those when the Duke boys first started out, and I really liked to run that race car. That was a beautiful race car. Like it kind of, I don't know, like I was running McCullough's car there, and like the Duke boys were pretty fast. It was Dan. And by the way, I watched an interview that Tim had with Dan back a while, and I think, you know, I tend to agree with pretty well everything that Dan Duke had to say in this interview that night. But they started that class and they worked really hard at it, and like, you know, it sort of evolved into, I don't know what it is now, but at the time we tried to get it in Scotia, and it should have come back to Scotia, but Ernie for some reason didn't want it there because he'd already had his class of modifieds and it didn't go, and I don't know, it's just a whole ball of wax. But like, they had a little thing that you wasn't allowed to bump drive in that open wheel class. So the Duke boys decided to, all of a sudden, you're allowed to bump drive. Well, if you're allowed to bump drive, well then, you know, it's okay. But I think the reason being that there's a couple of cars that was faster, and they thought they couldn't be bump drafted. So McCullough, and like the rule was that you had to have used slicks, and the guys were up from the States the week earlier, and Gordy had got a set of American Razor tires from somebody down there that was up here racing, you know, that was fairly fresh, and I stuck in one of that car's his, and we were in PEI, and I could just go anywhere, you know. So I started bump draft, and I kind of got my finger slapped for bump drafting, and all of a sudden you were allowed to bump draft. But then won the race and got DQ'd for running. I don't know, like really, I couldn't understand it. Pissed Gordy off, and he quit. But it was a really nice class of race cars, you know. And you know, kudos to the boys for getting that thing together, and it was a cheap race car too. Like, nice car to run. It's basically a street stock, the old street stock that's built into a modified. You know, I don't know what it is now. It's probably evolved into something I don't even know. But at the time, that was a really nice race car to run.
Yeah, the class certainly has evolved, and you know, it's not as cheap as what it was back in the day for sure, but it's still definitely quite an affordable class. And we run them quite a bit in Miramichi. We're fortunate to have that, and I know Doug and Joe work hard at keeping that going. And before I throw it over to Tim, I see a question on social media that I think we just got to get to from Curtis Lindsay. So he asks, how about the time you spun Scott Fraser when he was lapping you in Riverside to teach him etiquette and to get on TV?
How about the time that they get on the radio and ask me to spin out to get Scotty's position back? Ask Curtis Lindsay about that. You know, I take the dive, But I'll tell you the reason I did it. In the race, I wasn't running that good. Scotty and JJ were the two fastest cars in the track, and they were racing. Well, I was in the middle of traffic. You know, I was in the middle of traffic, and JJ is chasing Scotty, and we're coming off a turn 2, and Scotty spun me in the middle of traffic. You know, that's one thing to spin a guy, you know, going into a turn where you'll spin to the infield, you know, and get out of trouble. But you don't spin a guy coming off a turn 2. And I was giving him room. I wasn't pushing him up against the wall or nothing. Plenty of room. But Scotty got into me, maybe not purposely, but got into me and spun me. So Tanner comes on the radio. Jackie was his radio man. He said, "You know who you just spun?" Because I think they knew there was going to be payback. So there was a little bit of payback, and the best part about it was, like Scotty was faster, you know, but then he was lapping me second time or something. We went into the turn, and I could get into the turn pretty good, so I get into the turn and hit him, you know, to spin him, but he didn't spin. He just went sideways, so I had to hit him the second time to spin him. So when I hit him the second time to spin him, and it did spin him, I guess it was Dan. Was it Dan or the other guy that the cat people were sponsored? Scotty jumped right up out of the stand, up in the stands from what I heard. But you're not going to buy that goddamn race car. He's let off the track. Anyway, but you know, it's just a little bit of headache. They kind of get on to me a little bit about it. But things happen in racing, you know. It's an emotional game. You do what you got to do. Anyway, that's the way racing goes.
We got a couple of more stories on social to get to, but you mentioned Dan. I want to get your take on the news about Dan being the new general manager at Scotia and on the tour coming up.
Dan, well, he's a hell of a guy. I had him and Scotty Fraser down to my dirt track there in Dutch one time. We had a hell of a race. Dan's a pretty good racer too, you know, like we had a hell of a time there on the dirt track. So I think he'll be all right. He understands racing. He's been at it pretty well as long as anybody. You know, knows the ropes. You know, good businessman. He should be all right.
We got a couple of stories here to tell. First of all, Brent Patterson watches us every week. What would we do without fans? Good to have Brent along. And he wants to know if you've ever raced at Cedar Mills in St. Stephen.
No, never raced at Cedar Mills. I'll tell you where I did race though one time, and there was a track out on Fredericton, not 660, but the other side of Fredericton, out the other way there, I think.
Brookside.
Brookside, is that where it's at?
Possibly.
I raced there one time. I raced there, but I had a sportsman car, and they used to run the sportsman cars together with like late model sportsmen. And I can just remember one thing about a nice little racetrack, but the pit gate was coming off the back straightaway, just about 3/4 out of the turn, something like Moncton Riverglade used to be. And like the only way to get around the track was to hit the back bumper on that cement wall where the pit gate was. If you wasn't clicking that gate where that come out, then you couldn't get around the track. At least that's what I found. You know, and if you could get out close enough, you could let the back bumper hit that wall right at that pit gate, then you could get into the next turn. But I can remember we raced there in the summer, and it was so damn hot that you couldn't take your hands off the steering wheel and put them on the inside of the steering wheel, the steel part, because you'd burn your hands. It was that hot. Jesus, I never in a race car it was that hot before. I do remember that racetrack.
Now we got Mike James watching from Newfoundland. He wants to know if you've ever been to Newfoundland to race.
Never been to Newfoundland to race. No, like to get over there, but like, you know, the clock's ticking. Like, I'd probably be so tired by the time I got to Newfoundland I couldn't race. So what's the point? You know.
Well, if they can get you a legend car or a sportsman car geared up, would you fly over and wheel it for them?
Depends on whether I'm racing my horse.
Okay.
I'm getting my kicks out of horse racing now. You know, race cars kind of take a back seek to it, and I've got a little message for all those young fellows racing. It will happen. You know, there will come a time when you figure racing's not everything. You know, there are other things. I know I used to think that racing was everything, but as you get older, you know, you can take it or leave it. But you disappear in dreams of yesterday all around me here. You know, that's just the way it is.
Now, I saw something here from Stacy Clements. Ask him about running a big block Chevy engine from Stan's Speed Shop.
Big block Chevy engine from Stan's. I don't know that. Well, I got into a couple of big block deals there one time. But is he talking about the one that running Bernie Korsgaddens at the road race? Or is he talking about the 409 I borrowed from the Miller boys to run in my Chevy at Atlantic Speedway when everybody was running a 313 Pontiac motor, which is an American motor. So I couldn't catch Heifer in these guys. But there was a couple of them there running this American motor. Well, you could run it, you could get it was supposed to be a 313 where you could get a 389 motor in the American Pontiac motor that was basically the same thing, but it was a bigger motor. So I was stuck running a 307, and Stanley had they outlawed their 409 engine. So it was just sitting there. So I said, well, why don't we put that 409 in my car and we'll go racing. Stanley gave me the motor, put it in for me and everything, and I went down. To Atlantic Speedway with it. Of course, he wasn't allowed because you could tell right off the bat it was a 409. So the tech man comes up and says, "What the hell is that in your car?" I turned right around and said, "It's a Mexican 2E3." All these guys are running that American Pontiac motor, so I had to have a Mexican motor. And he said, "Well, they're all complaining about it. You'll have to take it out." He made me take it out. What it was, a Mexican 283.
You mentioned the road race. We had Dan Eddy on here last week, and we were talking about the Moosehead Grand Prix. So what do you remember about the road racing back in the 90s?
Well, I'll tell you, those cars are not made to go that fast. They'll come down, I forget the name of the street. You come up across to the police station there. You turn by the police station. Then you had that long run up to the Commons. You could get close to 150 mile an hour with that car, with those race cars, up across there. And the windshield would come down on you. And then you're going right into a turn just like that. So you got to get her woed up to get into that turn. My Jesus was scary. Scared the shit out of me. But when you're young, you don't give a shit. You're going to go anyway. I don't know why somebody didn't go over the wall or into something because I had pretty good luck at it. I was leading the race there. I had Bernie Korsgaddens' big 427 or big drag racing motor. Bernie built it and gave it to me to run that road race because it had tons of power. I don't know how fast the rest were going up that straightaway, but I know that big old sucker was just thump you up there like you scare the shit right out of you. But I was leading the race, and somehow I got into Clattenburg. Somehow we rubbed together, and didn't it break my fender loose in the front? And the fender was kind of flopping a little, just the front of the fender. It wasn't any big deal. Black. Me leading, they blacked. It's a fender's flap. Well, Jesus Christ. Talk about raging. My temper. I don't think they had anger management back then.
We did the road race at AMP a couple of times with that legend car, and I think you told me one time that the roads are for getting to the racetrack and not for racing on. What do you remember about those couple of legend car appearances we made out there at AMP?
Same thing. Too fast. Way too fast. Those legend cars were built to go 60 mile an hour max. Right now they're doing 85 and 90. You put them in that long straightaway in the backstretch, and they get so light you can't feel anything. I'm going 120 miles an hour down that backstretch, and I can't feel anything. That's scary. That's scary, Tim. I don't care who you are. That's scary. And I'll tell you something that scared me more. Who's ahead of me? Paul Blankhorn. And he's pretty near losing it. And he's going like this. off the edge of the pavement and everything in front of me. I said, holy shit. That's not for me. But I didn't seem to bother Paul any. But my car, once I can't feel it, that's it. I'm in over my head. So you might say they scared me out of it.
Now the plan is apparently to take those mini stocks out there this year, a heavier car, a little bit less power. So what kind of advice can you give those mini stock guys that are chomping at the bit? Because I'm sure Davey's going to be out there.
Well, they'll be fine. They'll be fine. They're all right. They're low. Then they got decent tires on them. They're set up to race. They'll be fine. That'll be fun. That'll be fun for them. But the legend cars are not. They're not aerodynamic. The wind gets under them. So really, but those kind of 4 cylinders would be great. They'll have some fun.
Now, Stacy said the motor he was referring to, it was Bernie's.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was Bernie's. Well, that was the road race in Halifax. It worked out good, and I think Bernie's probably still got that. They call him Bernie Big Block. So I'll bet you he's still got it.
Now, Corey Lund wants to know, this might be the night that Marty won his race in Halifax. He said, I'll never forget a night at Scotia, you jumping out of your race car and jumping on a radio to finish spotting the racer Marty.
I didn't jump out of my race car. Marty kept me to spot for him. But like Marty at the time, it was before the crate motors came in. And Scotia is a type of racetrack. If you've got horsepower and you can use it, you can do a number on the other guys. But you've got to have the horsepower. And at the time, Marty had more horsepower than anyone, and his race car was faster than anyone. Marty just couldn't get things together. So I get on the radio with him and get him started out, and get talking to him and keep him calmed down. And like after a few laps, kind of get him into a rhythm. Well, he had pretty damn heavy competition behind him. Like he had JJ and Scotty, and at the time they were the fastest, but Marty had the horsepower. And if you could get him in, like I kept saying, Marty, 6 inches, don't go in faster than 6 inches past that guy's bumper on the outside, and you'll be fine, because that would get him off the turn. If he went in too fast, you see, he couldn't make the turn, he couldn't get off the turn. But if he, all the traffic and everything, if he go in just on the corner and then kind of roll through the corner a little bit, he could get off really good. Well, he kind of got the rhythm going, and then you kind of taught him how to work the brake, and on the restarts, back that back brake off. Don't leave that back brake on, and then keep working the back brake on as you're going through, because a little more back brake will get you in there a little deeper without doing too much damage. And then when you make the front, slow up. Use your horsepower. If there's a car behind you, Scotty's right on his ass, John Fleming's on his ass, and so JJ just stomping. But Marty had more horsepower than him. He could pull them 2 car lengths coming off the corner if he stayed low and come off square. And when he was on the lead, he could do that, right? And I could see that Marty had enough horsepower. They couldn't catch him because he had more horsepower. And as long as he didn't go too wild in the turns and come off that corner square, slowed up in the middle, and got off square, he could leave them 2 car lengths. Well, they got frustrated after a while because they didn't know this is Marty, right? They figured they're going to pass Marty. Well, after Marty gets into a rhythm and going, they're not touching him. And then like the same old trick when you're coming to traffic, you get by the traffic, but then slow up. Even if you go by the traffic, slow up, and that'll freak the guy up behind him in traffic. So you get then go like hell. When they get together, when the Scotty and JJ and John are all racing one another, you go like hell because you get traffic behind them. You use them as a pick, and that would give Marty a lead. Well, Scotty and JJ would get frustrated trying to catch him because Marty had the lead, and with using that horsepower, he could pull them. And when you use the watch of them, Marty is actually faster than them, and they're going as fast as they can. So if you pull a few of those tricks, Marty ends up winning. Best time of his life. All you had to do was just control the moment.
Now he's got that fast fury now. He's been close a couple of times. So all he needs is you on the radio, right?
No, it's changed now. It's all, like I said before, they have crate motors. This was before the crate motors, right? So now they have a crate motor with a 4-barrel one. So you can have as much horsepower as you want. That little crate motor works some damn good because it's got a 4-barrel. Why in hell you ever went to a crate motor and put a 4-barrel on it? It's more than I'll ever know, because it made the big motor anchors. You know, there's too many penalties. So everything has changed. The race car has changed completely. And now that you've got the crate motor, they're all more equal. You can't get that 3/10 that Marty had. You can't get it now because everybody's got a crate motor. The technology has turned over now to shocks, springs, you know, and spring rates and everything, to the point of where, well, all you got to do is look at a NASCAR now. You know, that's coming down from the Formula One engineers, all that technology, you know, for a bunch of old hillbillies like us racing. Yeah, we need that. We need that. So it's changed. It's changed now. And if you've got, you know, gale force machines and pump rubbers and shock technology, it's just gone too far. And the creativity has gone out of it because the engineers have taken it over, and computers will stick up a flag and say, you've got to do this in that corner. And it's changing, Tim. So in order for somebody to pull that trick that me and Marty pulled, not going to happen.
Now we can have a party now, because I see that Gordy McCullough is watching. Now he left us a comment. So let me read this here. He says, I have the 6'4" 2 trophies here in my shop in Victory Lane in Middle Sackville. Me and Cy got at Charlotte and at Barrie Speedway.
Well, he's got quite a little trophy room, Gord. Yeah, Gord used to travel with me there. We've had some pretty good times on the road with those race cars, you know. Yeah, good.
Yep. Gordy's been wanting me to get over to the shop, and I haven't yet. But Gordy, I'm coming home tomorrow, so maybe next week sometime I'll slide over to Middle Sackville. I know he's still pretty busy though.
Oh, yeah. You'll get a look at those big trophies. Gordy's got some man cave geared up there with the trophies and the pictures. It's a whole history.
I know he's been working with Andrew Lively a little bit too, and working with Robbie Thompson. So I know he's had his hands full here last couple of seasons.
Oh yeah. That's right. So I don't know what Robbie's going to do.
Yeah, he's got some more legend cars sitting over there. You got at least one of them from him in the shop.
Yeah, I bought that one from him. And like I say, I like the race car. It's good. We'll see what takes place there with that.
I want to ask you about the trucks. We kind of danced all the way around your racing career. I want to come back to the trucks for a moment, because you got in that truck that you bought from Robbie Watts, and I think 2 weeks after you got it, you drove it into Victory Lane. So I know there's another story I want to talk about with this truck deal. But what did you think about that truck deal as a whole?
They let me win. He's a newcomer. Let's be courteous. You know, everybody just kind of pulled over and let me win. So I can't say much else. Thanks a lot, fellas. I love it. I never won again after that. But as long as you win one, that's enough. Don't be greedy. Can't win them all.
Well, at the end of that deal, Steve Ettinger drove it. I think Danny drove it. Jeff Cruikshank drove it. It became the community truck at the end of it, didn't it? Haas drove it.
Yeah. She was quite a slut.
Yep. Now, I want to ask you about the wedding. Now, Darren and his bride got married at Scotia, and everybody was there. And then there was a truck race that night, and there was a full moon over turn 2. What do you remember about that?
I can't remember. When was it?
That was the race that I think Jeff Campbell and Darren got into it, and I think you got swept up into it.
I can't remember that thing. I can't remember. I remember the wedding. I remember we got Darren married up on the front stretch. Yep. Everything went fine, but I think I had to leave early or something that night.
Oh, okay. Darren is still watching, so I'm sure he'll refresh our memory, but he wants to know, ask him about the Buick Street Stock he bought from Billy Powell Jr. Had a wide rear end.
Well, that's another one of those creative things, Tim. As the rules go, we racers are always trying to get around the rules if we can, use a little bit of creativity to do it. A street stock like that, when you station wagon, a 70, I forget the year, 75, 6 Chev Impala station wagon, had a rear end that was 2 inches wider. And it had a bigger ring gear, you could put a better gear in, and like, you know, those are the type of things that if you pick up on them and pick up enough on them, you'll win races. It's just that simple. Like, and the races are always at it. It's still going on today. That's what this technology is all about. You know, it evolves. And if there's a rule, like over the years, I've had more rules made as far as I'm concerned. It's only my opinion. I have had more rules made against what I'm running because, you know, I probably come up with something just in the back of my mind that here's a loophole and here's a way to get through it, you know, that will make the race car faster. As a matter of fact, over the years of NASCAR, I had to take, like the Jollymore boys, when I bought that car for Rolling, Gary and Randy put a body on that car that was big and flat, looks like the cars today, you know, and I won a couple of races with it, and the car was good, you know, outlaw the body. I ended up having to buy Seward's old body that he took off the year previous for the next year so I could race because I wasn't allowed the body was on my car, you know, so it kind of pissed me off. So why are you outlawing my body? It's within the rules. There's nothing against it. Same way with the engine. I had a Rolly come up here and won one of the ACT races with an engine, you know, that was a 421 or 422 engine, cubic inch engine. I bought it from Rolly, put it in my race car. Oh no, you can't have that. That motor's too big. They changed the rules. There was no cubic inch rule at that time. They changed the rules to 359 cubes. Outlawed my engine. That engine had aluminum heads on it. So I take the aluminum heads off of that engine, take them up to Dwight. Dwight builds me a 350 Chev engine with these aluminum heads on it. Win a couple of races with that. Oh, you can't have aluminum heads. so I had to take my aluminum heads off because every time you win a couple of races, it just, you know, it just kind of goes on and on. It's the same kind of a deal with the rear end in the Powell car. I put a rear end that was 2 inches wider. Well, 2 inches wider is the same as 2 inches shorter. And it's the same thing. I had that car that I got from Rolly was 100-inch wheelbase. Everybody else was 104. I'm 4 inches shorter than everybody else. They can't even get me on the scale. Well, you read a few of these things into these race cars and it makes you wonder why they're faster. Well, there's one of the reasons. You know, you're doing something that's different that isn't really against the rules, but the rules will change. Every time I win a couple of races, the rules would change. So then I go into retirement. It's the only thing to do is go into retirement. Then make a comeback. I like Frank. I make a comeback every 3 years.
I heard he's racing the sportsman car again this year.
I heard that too. Yes, for Christ's sake. And not only that, he's agreed to come to the horse races with me.
Oh, there you go.
A horse, you know, Frank told me he used to show a horse and drive a horse. So I'm going to have him in that fight before the summer's up.
Now, I know, is it still the same way where you have to wait 3 years to get your license and another 3 years to...
They gave me my license. I complained and squealed and whined so much that they finally just decided to give him his license, to shut him up. You know, so they gave me the license. There was a bit of controversy about it. Like, I mean, there always is a bit of controversy. I called the guy up and put on the hustle, you know, that's Henry Smallwood's got no driver. Let me qualify my own horse. So they let me qualify my own horse, but that kind of morphed into me getting the driver's license. The guy that gave it to me, the head guy from the Harness Racing Association, calls me up and he said, "Yeah, I thought you just wanted to qualify your horse." Too late now. The cat's out of the bag. You had to give it to me.
So who would win in a horse race, you or Frank?
We'll find out.
I want to be there for that.
But you know, one thing I've noticed, Tim, over the years, about the difference between the horse racing and the car racing. In the horse racing, the horse gets all the glory. driver gets nothing. Car racing, you can have the best equipment in the world. The driver gets the glory. That's why I was getting all that glory with all that creative stuff that I was doing to a race car. You know, I was the man with the ego, and I was the man getting the glory, but it was really the race car that was going to win it. So your equipment means a lot. You know, and this whole world is full of drivers. You go down south. When I was down south, those shops were full of guys down there, kids that could really drive race cars, looking for the big ride. You know, it happens all the time. And that's one of the things that I've kind of noticed about the horse racing is that horse gets the glory, car racing man gets the glory. What do you do about that?
That's it. I want to get back to the horses in a second. Lori Hutt commented that car used to always run out of gas too. I'm assuming he's meaning the Buick.
Well, when you go to races, you go to race. You got a B feature, right? And they're taking 10 cars with a B feature to put them in the A. So you run out of gas in the heat race, you get the B feature. You go to the front of the heat race, well, you're going to win, so you run out of gas. You get in the B main. Well, you're going to start 10th or something. If your car is good enough, you'll make it into the A main because they're going to take 10 cars. So you get to race the extra race, right? You come to race. What's the sense of setting out?
That's it.
Don't put enough gas in the car.
I know a couple of Thunder car guys that used to think that way when we had all those cars. Curtis Lindsay is back. He said, Cy gave me my first race car and I won my first ever race, which was a 200 lap enduro at Moosehead.
Moosehead. Is that right?
That's what he says.
Well, point to the moose back. Yeah, should have that car back. I'd like to have it, yeah. That was another nice little track. You know, Moosehead was a nice little track. But no, well, I guess I think Curtis won his first race.
And Darren Bezanson said that night that he got into it on the wedding was him and Tony Leonard. Maybe it was you. Maybe it was Jeff Campbell that got into you that night.
Was that the night that Campbell smoked me in the back?
Yeah, yes.
I saw him coming. I don't know what I did something to piss him off. Something anyway. I saw him coming out of the pits. I said to myself, I wonder if he's going to be pissed off. And he was nailing her down the front stretch. he was coming. He was going to nail me wide open. Just about the time he was ready to nail me, I hit the brakes. And it really did a number. But I mean, you know, I don't know what I did to upset him, because I, like a lot of things in racing I've noticed over the years, Tim, is I cannot drive the car behind me. You know, as a lot of things happen behind me that I get the blame for. Well, hey, whose fault is it? You're driving behind me. Why am I getting the blame for it? You know, so really, you got to be careful. Different times, you know, things will happen. Well, I caused it. Let me tell you a story about O'Blennis, Petty, racing Petty. And O'Blennis comes up out of somebody dumped O'Blennis down over the end, and he's down in the bushes. So he comes storming up over the bank, right, pointing his finger at me and shaking his finger at me. And he said, I dumped him down over the track. Well, I was in the back stretch when he went down over the track. And then and so he come over, and after the race was over, he come over and apologized. He said, I'm sorry, so I know that wasn't you. He said, but it was a black car. It had to be me. I had an awful laugh about that, because he felt so embarrassed that blaming me for putting him over the end, and I was in the back stretch. Yeah, and anyway, story.
Let's get back to the horses for a minute. How's everything going with Henry, and what's the outlook look like for this year?
Oh, well, it's just the same, you know. Soon be time the weather gets a little better, they'll get the track fixed up, we'll do a little jogging, and things have become so expensive, Christ, trucking horses and stuff, there's not a whole lot of money in that horse racing, and you don't get the glory in that you get in car racing, because like I say, the horse gets the glory. Well, the horse don't know, for Christ's sake. What are you going to do? Give the horse a trophy? He don't know. So, like, what's the point? I'm finding that out more and more. I may be getting my fill of horse racing because my ego is not getting satisfied. I won a race. I did actually win a race. But once you've done that, it's all the same. You got to win 100. You got to win 1,000. Some of these horsemen have won 2,000 races. There's a guy, Wally Hennessy, was on the other day. He had won 2,000 races. Jesus Christ, 2,000 races? Can you imagine that? Gets no glory for it. You're just a decent horseman. That's it. So I went back to cars.
So this might be the year you transition back.
Well, the only problem is once you're into the horse racing, you got to get up. You got to do the exercise. You got to feed the horses. Horses have to be looked after. Like, you can retire out of racing, do nothing, turn the key. I've got 5 or 6 race cars sitting around here that really doesn't matter if they ever run again. If I'm retired and I don't want to run a race car, I don't have to run it, but it don't bother the race car any. But you can't do that with a horse. You've got to look after the horse. You're responsible for that. So it does make a difference. So it's harder to get out of the horse. And then what do? You fall in love. You ever been in love, Tam?
What's that?
Have you ever been in love?
Not recently, no.
Come up and meet Lucy. Look at Lucy here. Don't look too hard at Lucy or you might fall in love.
Well, don't I have a share in that?
You do. Give me that trophy there, Dan. Let me show that to Tim. I'd like to show him this trophy that I won. The horse race. Well, I get up, but Jesus Christ, Jim, tell me to get old. Whoops, look at that.
There you go.
I won that up in Fort Elgin. They're having a big race. And Jameson's, this was their memorial race. First race I ever won in a horse. Huh? Is that something?
Yeah.
Huh? Don't get too many like that, Tim.
Oh.
That's good.
Yep.
Take that. Show that.
Now,
trophy show.
Blake is watching. He wants to know how you got your start in the harness racing.
How did I get my start in harness racing? Well, I retired in 1984. I retired from Onslow out of, how did that go? I was racing Bobby White's car. I bored up engine from Bobby White, and I was racing, and I was doing all right with it, and the engine blew up. Something in the front there, okay? And I ended up had no motor for my race car, so I quit racing. And so I ended up going to Sackville Downs. Like the Sackville Downs was running then, and then I got into a deal there with a guy on a horse. Mike Gillis ends up selling me an old horse, and I needed a horse like I needed a hole in the head. But anyway, here I am with a racehorse all of a sudden. For whatever reason, got a racehorse. Don't know why I bought it, but I just said, "Oh, buy the racehorse." So that got me started in horse racing. Bought a few more over the years, and then kind of retired out of it because I had retired from the car racing. Decided I'd like to try something else. Then Onslow was running, so I just backed up a little bit in class. It started got a street stock for Onslow with Jimmy Canning, Raging Bull, and started back car racing again. Well, that kind of got me out of the horse racing. Started back up. So that's kind of started me, and then 10 years ago, I kind of got in with Henry Smallwood. Got a couple of race horses. Here we go. We're in a horse racing.
Pete Miller's watching, by the way. He said lots of laughs tonight. great show. So he's enjoying the show tonight.
That's good.
Yep.
He's a good competitor. You know, does his thing. He's one of the Miller boys over there. They've been racers all their lives. I don't know how many generations of it, but they got me started. Anyway, Stanley, Merlin.
Now, Todd Laffin says, put the seat sideways to feel like you're always turning. I'm assuming that's in the sulky.
No, that's creative. Like, you know how these guys have got in a race car, they set the seat straight with the steering wheel, right? Well, if you look at Henley and some of these guys, all you can see is their head up over the door.
Mm-hmm.
Reason for that. If you turn the seat sideways and lean it, when you go around the turn, instead of your head going out like this and making your neck sore, it's crunching you down into the seat. At the same time, you're always in a turn, so you're looking out the side window. Like, you don't need to worry too much about that corner because you got a mirror up there to tell you if you're not leaving somebody enough room, which doesn't matter these days, whether you leave people room or not. You know, so you're sitting down there and you're looking out the side, and you can go 200 laps, and your neck don't get sore. Because I find if you put that thing that your head rests up against in these full seats, you get the vibration in the car. Of course, there wouldn't be a vibration nowadays, and the stock that you run now would be smooth as a kitten. But you get vibrating your head, and it's hard to concentrate when there's something up against the side of your head. But that's the reason that seat's turned sideways and tipped.
There you go. What else do we have? There's a story, and I've heard a few about this. Curtis Lindsay's bringing up the legend cars at Truro Raceway on the dirt.
Oh, that was wild. I remember Ivan Langell. We were up there, come from Antigonish or something, rained out, and it's exhibition on Truro Raceway. So they had us legend cars running, and I can still remember that old shit and stuff that was on the racetrack, that crusher dust. Well, you'd spin all the time, you know, and you could get a rooster tail of that old crusher dust and horse shit flying up over the car. And I looked in the mirror, and Ivan was behind me, and Ivan always had a beautiful race car. Always kept things just shining, you know. Ivan, really good looking race cars over the years. So I'm looking at it, and I see this rooster tail. And Ivan is behind me, so I start fishtailing, and the rooster tail is going back and forth over Ivan. And when he come in, there was hardly any paint left in the car. Because that old crusher dust is just like sandblasted. Everybody needs the paint job after that. Wow.
We've got a few more minutes left. If you got any song requests in Facebook land there, drop them down below. So I've been playing with that guitar. We're gonna get them strumming here in a second. But last time we were at the RB show, we talked about you racing a Bandolero. I think that's the only thing you haven't run in your racing career. Is there anything else that you want to run, that you want to strike off the bucket list?
Well, at this stage of the game, Tim, like I was saying there earlier, you know, these young fellas are pretty good at racing, but it'll hit you one of these days. Like, it makes you sore. Like, you know, if you get in a race car and you're sore for 3 days for doing it, it kind of takes the fun of it, you know, because you get old, you get sore. Like, I was okay till I was about 70. And it seemed like when you hit 70, everything changes, you know, and like you kind of look back and you say, well, I've done it. You know, do I really want to go out there and beat these kids? No. What for Christ's sake? These kids that are racing today don't give a shit about some old turkey like me, you know. And what am I trying to prove? If I, like I always say, if I go out and win the race, they say, oh, that old son of a bitch should win. He's been racing for 50 years. And if you don't win, oh, the old son of a bitch was no good anyway. Never was. So you can't win. So I'm going to IRA. Is that what do they call that? The video thing?
Oh, the iRacing, yeah.
Because that's where it's headed, you know. That's where racing's headed, is to that, because everybody can compete. You know, it doesn't matter what you got. As long I can't, because I can't even run a stupid computer. You know, I can turn a phone on, but that's about it. But when it comes down to racing has evolved into that, because really, if I wanted to be competitive in the pro stock car, it's 100 to 125 grand to set me up. And tires, they say they're 250 a piece, and you got to have 4 new ones basically for every race. So I mean, the money that's involved is kind of evolved and priced itself out. Like you keep hearing on the news now, priced out. They got a series going. Well, it's not only the food, it's not only the rent, it's everything, including race cars. Priced out. Okay. What are we going to do?
That's it.
Know where it's headed. I'll tell you where it's going to head. Same as your iRacing or whatever the hell you call it. They're doing it already in Sydney. They have those endurance races. Curtis Lindsay won one of my cars one time, and like you get everybody wants to be involved today. Like there's 4-wheelers racing, there's mud trucks racing, there's snowmobile racing. There's so many different types of racing going that if stock car racing is going to survive, they're probably going to survive in a way that you're going to take a car off the street and have that endurance race, that 100-lap race, where everybody can be involved and each person that's in a race car will bring 20 people. There's your money. There's your money. If you can do that, and who gives a shit? Like the glory, the guy wins. He did just as much as he did to that guy with $100,000 car. And, it started out as a hillbilly sport. And it'll probably end up as a hillbilly sport.
He wins. He has a good time. He's hooked. He comes back the next week, right?
Exactly. Brings 2 more people with him. And we used to run over 100 cars at Scotia with those old, just ordinary cheap cars. Ernie would have over 100 cars. He could really put it together because everybody was involved. And now everybody wants to be involved in things. Atlantic Speedway women were not allowed in the pits. Check that out. Can you imagine that today? Because it caused too many fights. That was the reason. The racers would all get in a fight because the women were in the pits. You ever hear anything so ridiculous in your life? You wouldn't get away with anything like that today, but that was a rule back then. They didn't allow it. But where's it going?
That's it. Now, Greg Seward's watching. I see he dropped a comment here. Let's take a look. He said, ask Cy about when he lent us the motor for MassCar. He said he didn't want any money, so when we won 3 races with it, he decided he better get his share of the winnings.
Did I ever get it?
I don't know. Did you?
I don't remember. I got it. Dwight must have got it then.
So it wasn't you.
I can't remember. But you know what? You know why that is? I used to be a big fan of Don Biederman. Biederman come down here, In fact, that's the reason we bought that car is because Biederman and Hallahan and those guys, those old racers were the best at the time. Bobby Allen and them, and Seaward was winning everything. Seaward was top notch, winning everything. And I said, what the hell? I said to Biederman, what the hell is making his car go? Because Biederman was supposed to know these things, he was the racer. How's his car going? Biederman said, it's just exhausting a bunch of money. That's what Biederman said. So you were just exhausting money. So, I don't know what that was supposed to mean, but Seaward, he was the man for a long time. Still is if we get back in the car.
Well, he did say you got the money. That's what he says.
Well, I must have got it then, I guess. I must have got it. But I'm sure Dwight made good use of it. But anyway, that was good. But yeah. I'm wondering, Tim, you haven't talked too much about Patty's class there.
The hot rods. Yep.
Where do you think that might be headed now? You being around all the racing, you're still down south, but the racing is the main game. People make a living in it. What do you think of these classes of like the hot rod class? Where do you think that's headed?
Well, I think it's growing. They put out their schedule and everything else, and they said that Peter's got a car now, and Paul's got a car. Paul Blankhorn's got a car there in a shop in Truro, and there's a couple of others that are building it. So it looks like it's growing. But what do you kind of touched on it earlier about the rules. So I'll throw it back to you as a driver. Do they need anything rules wise to keep it where it is, or does it get too far out of the box?
Here's my thought on that. Remember I was telling you about the horses? And how when you win a race with a horse, the horse gets the glory. You win a race with a race car gets the glory. Take a look at the Hot Rod Classic. You got a race car, you get the glory, or does the car get the glory? Ask Stacy. He's got one. You know, is it like horse racing? Not saying there's anything wrong with it. It may be part of the evolution of racing. But if it's that part of racing where it's the car and people love it, those old cars that I geared up, people just loved them. You know, they come and moon over them and everything. But I don't know, like, where's it headed? What do you think? Is that a possibility that if you build a race car, the car gets the glory?
That's about where it seems like it's going right now with that series. Am I right?
Well, that's kind of my opinion on it. You know, I'm not saying that that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just kind of throwing it out there and getting some thoughts on that from somebody like yourself that's got all kinds and more experience than most people around racetracks and how to run and what interests people in them. And will the public support it? If that's the case, will the public continue to support that?
I think we'll see it over the next couple of seasons. I think with the mix of cars that is out there and Patty behind it and all their marketing partners that they have, I think it's going in the right direction to see it grow. It's just a matter of where you mentioned the future of it. Where does it go in 5 years?
Yeah, I guess time will tell. There's a lot of different people with opinions on this and that and rules and everything else, you know, and like you should do this, you should do that. Well, rules, you can't rule everything. Everything can't be ruled to death. So really, it's kind of it'll be interesting to see. I'd like to race mine, you know, again and get out on the track with Dan. Maybe I could run into Dan.
Well, see, so the problem was last year is that Dan had a hard time fitting in that 66 car.
I think I still wear on the door with me here. No.
Can you at least next year, Si, when he tries to get in that car, cut like a driver hole in there that he can slide in?
We had to do that for Haas in the pro stock. We had to beat the door down to get Haas in it. So I mean, that's not a problem. We'll just take a hammer and beat it down.
But Danny, you had fun in that thing, and was it you and Brian that got into it?
I'm not taking any of the blame.
No comment.
Brian got in my way.
We'll leave it at that. We'll make last call on social media now. If you have any questions or comments for Si, we do have one more in here. Si, Ricky McFetridge, who's partners with Stacy on that race car. So the time at Atlantic when you rolled the 18 car on its side, stopping the race to weld the oil pan. What was the story on that?
Jesus. My memory bank is, I don't know, I can't remember. I can remember something about welding an oil pan, but it's not something that really sticks with me. So you know, I'd have to think. It'll probably hit me in the middle of the night. Yeah, I remember that now. A little late to remember now.
Yep.
I do remember welding an oil pan because you get the oil away from it. If you tip it up at the side, the oil is away from where you're welding. And then you just kind of put the hose to it out of the exhaust pipe of somebody's car, and then it won't blow up. Another one of those things. Lots of things have happened over the years.
Absolutely. So if you have any more questions or comments, drop them down below. We're getting up near the top of the hour. Si, you've been playing with that guitar for a while. What are you going to sing us?
What, you want me to sing?
Oh, you've been playing with the guitar. You may as well pick her up.
You haven't got enough out of me yet? Damn. The truth, I couldn't sing a note. I'm toned down. If it sounds like a race car, I know it's I can tell you when a race car is missing, but I can't tell you. How can I play? I got no strings.
Oh.
So one of these days I might put some strings on. I got brothers that play, you know,
Yep.
Lots of music in the family, but I wasn't blessed with it. You know,
Now, I think you keep quoting me songs every time I ask you for a couple of words of wisdom at the racetrack. I think the most common one's the Merle Haggard song, right?
Oh yeah, well let me tell you a little something about that psychology thing. I'm getting pretty old now, and if you follow the poets, you'll have a good life. Because in the song, the poet writes the song, and there's a line in the song that you'll pick up on. Follow the poets. It's like these. If you there's a line in the song that says that these are disappearing dreams of yesterday. Christopherson, right? Haggard, are the good times really over for good? You know, all those old country songs, but you wouldn't hear too many of the young people don't listen to that stuff anymore. But then you got that there Joe guy that says life's been good to me so far. About all you can say. And as far as the race fans go, you know, Billy Joel's got one, might be on the radio there now. It's been me they've been coming to see, forget about life for a while. That's why the race fans in the stands. It's because he wants to forget about life for a while. That's it. That's it.
Why you're in Charlotte, Tim.
You're in Charlotte, Tim. That's why.
I'm flying home tomorrow, so the flight is not the stay is not much longer. I see Craig McFettridge is here. Tell us about your racing with Pete Robson at Atlantic.
Well, there was a story. Like that's kind of what got me into racing. One thing I remember about that is like Biederman and Henley were partners back at the time when John Howard had a car that Eddie Comeau had Henley built. And it was a street stock, or I guess you call it a sportsman back then. It was a sportsman car. Fast car. Eddie couldn't get it running. John Howard bought it from Eddie. Biederman and Henley come down here to race. John Howard's buddies with Henley. He took the car to the racetrack and they set it up for him. And Pete comes along. He says, you know, John Howard will sell that race car for $3,000. And it's all set up. And it's all ready to go. We should buy it before John gets it on the track because the races were rained out that night and he didn't get to race it. So Peter put up the money, bought the car, and took it to the racetrack. And like the thing handled like a dream. And it's one thing I learned about racing right off the bat then. You learn how the car should feel when it's handled right. And that race car was a perfect race car, and it's state of the art. You had a rear end in it that no one else had, with a 519 gear in it, you know, and you could just roll around Scotia Speedway or roll around Atlantic Speedway just like nothing, you know, because those pros had set it up. The best thing that ever happened, and won pretty well every sportsman race with that car. They tore us down the first night, of course. Figure we were cheating with camshafts and stuff, but everything was right in it, and that's kind of what I learned. And Peter was a racer, and you know, he liked it. Joe West now, I haven't seen him for a couple of years, but that was good. That's what got me off on the right foot as far as handling race cars go. If you know how they should be handled, it gives you quite an advantage.
All the good stories are coming in here at the end, so we got a couple more to tell before we let you go tonight. Wanda Miller said, so I used to sing Dead Skunk in the middle of my road to my kids when going to the races many years ago.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to sing it now. The one that can whistle Dixie. That's a story I got to tell you. Me being an old hillbilly from up here, I was down in North Carolina at the Nationals on the little track there, in the flat track. And I think I got second or something. I don't think I won the race. The guy was interviewing the top three guys after the race. Me, I don't know anything about politics or anything, you know. And so he said, what do you think now, you Canadian coming down here amongst all these pro racers and finishing up front like that? So he stuck the microphone in my face and I said, I didn't come down here to whistle Dixie. I might have started the goddamn war. I don't know about that stuff. For Christ's sake, it was just saying to me, and people go, oh, what are you saying that for? What are you saying that for? Well, I don't know. For Christ's sake, nobody ever taught me anything. I'm from Canada. So it kind of shook things up anyway.
You ran, not to get off topic, you ran the Legends Million down here when they had it, right?
Oh, that was the downfall. That was my downfall. I went down there, brand new legend car, figured I was going to piss on everybody, of course. You know, big shot, because every other time I was ever there, I did all right. You know, I had a competitive car. Couldn't get that thing running. Had no brakes, had no brake. I couldn't get the brakes to work right. I couldn't get nothing to work right. And the first night I was there, I stepped on Callahan's hoist, and the hoist went out from under me, and down I went, hurt my back. Oh, and I was just in agony the whole time I was there. Just a shit show. I just should never have went. Should never have bought the new car. Should have took my old car. I'd have been fine. But
Yeah, they let new cars never really want anything.
and it's never worked since. I've still got that car. It's never been satisfactory. Never. Right. Brand new race car for whatever it is, it's different. But I think as legend cars evolved, when they first come out, there was all kinds of different geometry in the front end. I could figure that geometry out with Ackerman and stuff and get it set up right, because I used to get Scotty to build me spindles, you know, that would match what they were exactly supposed to be. And that front end, you could turn that thing anywhere. But when they come out with these aluminum spindles and straight on geometry, like for the Ackerman thing, I couldn't, it was never the same. And then they outlawed the old spindles, you know, because they were just, if you kicked the wheel, you'd bend it. But if you got that right, you could steer that thing anywhere. You know, Scotty had a jig made off the spindles that would make it right, you know, and I could take it south or take it anywhere and race it. But that $1 million car, biggest mistake I ever made in racing. It's never been the same since.
Now we got a couple of questions that kind of go on the same thread here. Blake Collicutt watching, spots are Greg Proud. He wants to know, he said, I have a tape from the late 80s at Scotia where Cy parked it on the front straight in protest. Do you remember that?
Oh, I was out of gas. I never protested anything in my life. Protest in Ottawa, I don't think. All the protests in Ottawa. Maybe I was protesting for freedom or something. I don't know. Half the time I don't know what I'm doing anyway. So yeah, it's another memory. Like I got suspended one time because Rennie White and a bunch stopped, was protesting. I think it was Ronnie got them going at Atlantic Speedway, and like, they were all stopped in the front stretch. I don't even know what they were protesting now, but they were stopped in the front stretch, and I come by, right? And I thought there was a wreck, so I stopped at the inside to see what was, just for a second, to see what was going on. And Corbett suspended me with them. I wasn't even in the picture, for Christ's sake. And I got suspended, so I got suspended for nothing. But other times, like, you know, things happen because it comes back to that old deal where I figured somebody's shitting, you know, if I can remember right.
They put you to the back 3 times.
I think they put me to the back 3 times. Now I remember what it was. Young Osmond was connected. Scotia, Jackson, Osmond was blowing water all over the track. I was following them, and there was water all over the track, you know, and the steam was coming right out of the car. I think we were modified or something. Steam was coming right out of the car, and they wouldn't give him the flag. You know, it kind of pissed me off, and I don't think I did a hell of a lot, but I might have parked on the front stretch to protest that or something. I don't know. But that's the only time I can remember was that because they kept putting me to the back because Osmond was blowing the water out. So couldn't understand that. But anyway, there's a little bit of that in racing.
To that point, Ernie Lively's watching. He said, "Si, do you have any idea how many black flags you've been given over the years?"
Black flags?
Black flags.
I can't even remember getting any. When did I get a black flag, and what did I do to deserve it? I mean, I've been picked on all my life. I mean, everybody's picking on me, Jam. You know, Christ. But, I mean, yeah, there's been a few black flags, but you know, it kind of, like I said earlier, if you don't have a bit of a dirty streak in you, you're not much of a racer. Because all good racers will have a bit of a dirty streak. You know, you can't. It just goes with the game. You can't be nice all the time. Although I try to be. Just be respectful.
That's all you can ask for, right?
That's all. That's all.
Before we go, Denver, you got anything else for Si? I know you've been sitting over there quiet. You've got to have something.
Well, I got a couple things for Si.
Okay.
First of all, Si, let's look back. Pick one moment. What is your biggest highlight from your career? If it's, I know that's probably not easy to do, but if you can pick one, what would that be?
Highlight? One highlight? Well, it's kind of all meshed together. You know, the highlight is, you know, like I said before, life's been good to me so far. That's the highlight. I'm still here, half healthy. Bunch of trophies sitting around me. If I wanted to tell stories, you know, it'd be like go back to the song again. Boring stories of the glory days. They'll pass you by. Glory days. The wink of a young girl's eye. You know, where have you heard that? So it's in the songs, in the poet. Life's been good to me so far. I'm still here. And as long as the people keep singing, the poets keep poeting, I guess you'd call it poeting, then I'll be fine. We'll get by.
Oh, for sure.
Out for my friends.
Before we go, I have one more question I want to throw at you, and it's a bit of a loaded question. Say you're a promoter of a racetrack for a day. If you could make one change to put more people in the grandstands, what would that be?
Already went over that with Tim there about these endurance races and stuff, you know, because this stock car game started out with hillbillies running moonshine and stuff, you know, it's an ordinary stuff, and like and everybody wants to be involved in everything today. There hasn't been anybody in the stands for years, probably won't be, because racing has kind of been evolved into something for the elite, you know, because the ordinary person can't do it. But if you start these races where people can be involved in the race, which is a race, you know, and you got 100 cars and you got a 100-lap race, you know, and people pay like $20 or something to get in, that's the evolution of it, because you got to have those people involved and interested, and it'll get them away from the four-wheelers and the snowmobiles and the you know, the side-by-sides and the mud trucks and all this stuff, and bring them back into something that they enjoy, you know, and like keep them involved. And the stands will be full, because if you bring 100 cars, you bring 10 people, say, to each one to see their guy, how he's going to do. And then, like, it's not all about winning the big race. It's about being involved in it, and your stands are full, and the promoter has made money, you know, rather than trying to, because if you take note, I've heard this, can't confirm it 100%, but I've heard a lot of when you go to a pro stock race today, the parking lot will be full of RVs, and half the people in the RVs don't watch the race. Why is that? You know, they come and park their RVs to the campsite and they build a fire and they'll party, they don't come to the race. And what's that all about? I mean, you want to involve people. They got to be involved. And it's great to have the race like they have in Antigonish, where they have thousands of people coming there. It's once a year. Is that really going to be, is a promoter going to spend $1.5 million on a racetrack to have one race a year? You got to have something that's rolling, and you've got to have something that's going to keep more and more of the people interested. I think, Ernie had the right idea back at Scotia in the early 90s, where he was having these endurance races and stuff. And now you got Greg Dow had one that was pretty successful in Sydney. And I understand they're having them in Miramichi, are they? In Miramichi, they have them. So if that's where it's going, I don't know what the young people will think of it, but if you take a look at these legend cars and see how competitive you have to be to race a legend car, then you're going to have a few second thoughts about that. As far as racing goes, and as racing is racing, it doesn't matter what you're in, where you're at. If you're racing, you're racing. But time will tell. Time will tell.
Tim, Drew McEachern says the best episode ever. That's a bold statement.
We could go on for another couple of hours, but I know that producer you got behind you, Mr. Harvey's got to get to bed at some point. I know he's.
I'm asleep now.
I'm
recording. I'm virtual. I'm not really alive. I think they call it that Corleone photography or something. I'm not real. I'm not real. I'm just an illusion. And it's like, do you have the illusion of a race? Check that out. If the crowd in the stands is watching a race, and it's not really a race, is it an illusion? Think about that. See where you land with that.
We're going to have everybody think about that. That's going to be our final. Is there any more final thought that you have for this evening?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I'll never stop thinking. But right at this stage of the game for this moment, no, that's it.
Okay, I guess that's it. Paul, throw up our partners. I'm gonna throw you off a loop. We're gonna go off script. Throw up the partners. Want to thank these folks for being a part of this deal that we do. This has been a blast here this evening. Si, thank you for being a part of this deal, and we're gonna have to do this again at some point down the road, because we had 2 hours, and I don't think 2 hours was enough.
2 hours? Is that? Oh, geez, I passed my bedtime. I was being bed at 9.
I kept you up a little longer. Paul, can you drop the text on that so we can see the rest of them there? There you go. We'll get them up there. Want to thank everybody that's on the screen that helps put this on. I don't know how we top it, but we're going to try it next week. So for everybody here, Paul Strickland Jr., Denver Matchett, Cy and Danny, want to thank you for tuning in this evening. Until next time, keep the hammer down. We'll see you at the track.
Yeah, Tim. Thanks, Tim.